Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining Make Confident Sourcing Decisions using AnyLogistics with scenario-based strategic sourcing. My name is Alex. Our goal today is to show you how to evaluate suppliers effectively and efficiently, and specifically how to manage the vendor selection process and evaluate prior to awarding the business to a supplier. After this webinar, you'll know how optimization and simulation is being used in sourcing. This is a recorded webinar, but we encourage you to ask questions when you have them. You'll see a chat window that looks something like this picture. We have a team ready to respond to your questions as you ask them. Although we may wait to respond to some of your questions until the end, where we'll have a Q&A, if you don't want to submit your question in the chat, you can go ahead and contact John directly at simul.io or Jay Santabi at simul.io. Today's webinar is hosted by Simul, a consulting company specializing in simulation and optimization. We're also an AnyLogistics distribution partner in North America. My name is Alex. I'm a senior supply chain consultant at Simul with over 17 years of supply chain experience, and I lead the training here in ALX in North America. Today I'll be showing you how to make confident sourcing decisions using ALX. I'm joined by my colleague John, partner at Simul, as he specializes in helping companies answer their most critical what-if questions through simulation. Today, he will be monitoring and answering your questions. So first, let's begin to identify the difference between sourcing, strategic sourcing, and scenario-based strategic sourcing. With sourcing, it's pretty much qualifying, assessing, and selecting suppliers to obtain a good or service. With strategic sourcing, you're taking a lot more into account. You're taking in the pricing, the cost, the service, the quality, but using something as basic as something in paperwork or using Excel to come up with the numbers, typically using like an RFI or RFQ to identify where the supplier stands. And then with scenario-based strategic sourcing, you're using network optimization and simulation to assess all those components and to understand how it's going to perform over time. This means understanding their performance, their service, their risk, and understanding all the trade-offs that come with it. Going through the strategic sourcing process requires extensive work, but it doesn't have to be. With scenario-based sourcing, it allows you to model solutions just using data-driven policies. This is far from an RFI, RFP, or an RFQ, but these evaluations can still be part of the process and can be very helpful and in many cases minimized. So if you want to quickly focus and optimize your choices and see the potential performance, then you're in the right place. I guess we've all been a part of a project or contract where suppliers have been detrimental to their supply chain or organization. And in some cases, low-cost suppliers have led to back-end unforeseeable costs that lead to a worse margin than before. Why scenario-based strategic sourcing? Some of the benefits is to achieve optimal profit, desired outcomes in suppliers, to save time, to prescribe solutions to fulfill all your demand, be agile in comparing, and gain unbiased results in your selection process of the vendors. And these benefits don't really stop here. You're also going to be affectionately learning and spending time with the right vendors that make sense to your supply chain in terms of optimal profit. Effectively narrow down your results and prioritize with the largest opportunity vendors and work your way down from top-ranked options. You could also reduce your vendor selection cycle. And you can focus on maintaining or improving customer service and lead time in your organization if it's reducing volatility, lead time, risks, shortages, or cost, and etc. The key takeaway here is that you'll be able to focus on profit and cost and review potential positive performing vendors while managing and being agile with your selection process. So this is why we work with AnyLogistics. It's the only one that can capture the complexities of your process and accurately predict the outcome of your decisions. What's the real cost of choosing the wrong supplier? How often does it happen? What's the financial implication? How do you work with an awarded contract to a supplier that was not capable of fulfilling or successfully completing in your supply chain? How does it impact the supply chain or your customers? Selecting the wrong supplier can impact the quality, the speed, and the cost of your supply chain. This also includes your deployment, and your customers. And the impact can be small to large. With scenario-based strategic sourcing, you'll be able to understand how the supply will impact the supply chain from a speed, cost, quality perspective, making sure they positively impact and align to the cause of the organization. You'll also know if the supplier has even the opportunity to meet expectations and understand where they rank in comparison to other and current suppliers. All this can be done now using optimization and simulation. How is scenario-based strategic sourcing with AnyLogistics different? ALX works with 4 components of only 2 we are going to use today, starting with optimization, which has the ability to obtain the most profitable supplier while fulfilling demand. Next, we have simulation, with the ability to understand supplier performance over time, if it's revenue, cost, service level, risk, etc. This equation sourcing leads into 3 results, and that is confident, effective, and efficient decisions based on what your current performance is. Currently, many companies do sourcing comparisons using spreadsheets, which require an RFI and RFP to be filled by the supplier themselves. To a certain extent, you may still need some of this information to gather and using your models, but you'll now be in control to assess and interpret their performance and the reality of their offer in terms of it's a better supplier than what you currently have to begin with, if there is any. This becomes important, especially when it involves deployment, projects, and many moving parts, which is hard to do in a spreadsheet. Today, though, we'll be focusing on optimization and simulation and why this represents a major advancement in sourcing. Today, in the real world, in selecting the right suppliers, each supplier could have different offers, products, locations, and incentives. So selecting the right one is crucial. Now, upon rewarding the contract to the supplier and implementing in the real world solution, you need to wait for results, which can be months to a year later. While in the meantime, you need to gather and resolve the impacts resulting out of that supplier. This in turn is no longer the best way to do things in the real world, but has now gone digital. With digitization, we now have the ability to model our organization's supply chain. This in turn provides us the opportunity to create a copy of it and work in a risk-free environment. And by providing a model or network optimization or a simulation, we can find out the success opportunity of that vendor, potentially saving time and money to the organization. You'll be able to understand the ROI introducing that supplier in terms of your current baseline, and you'll be able to evaluate how successful they will be from a performance perspective. The great thing about optimization is that the solution could be a vendor, your current vendor still, or it could be multiple vendors, or any of the new vendors with a combination of your current vendor. And so this benefit creates an opportunity to assess real problems. Next, we're going to be able to put that solution into play and find out how well it performs over time. And if the solution is great, finally implement it in the real world, saving that time and effort that it potentially could have been wrong in the first place. Today, we're going to learn how to manage suppliers effectively and efficiently to make the best decision. We're going to start with an optimization, create a baseline, work with several different suppliers and create scenarios, and then eventually work with a scalable multi-vendor opportunity where we could potentially manage several vendors from different product categories to select the best suppliers. And then we're going to run a simulation and then hopefully finally give the confidence to execute to make that decision. Okay, let's go ahead and begin our demonstration with how to make confident sourcing decisions using AnyLogistics. Let's begin. For those that are new to ALX, I'm going to give a brief overview of what you're looking at. Currently, we have 4 components available. We have what's called our GFA, Greenfield Analysis. This analysis, you could search and validate locations and the number of locations, the right locations to find DCs, forward stocking locations, and so forth. Then we have network optimization, which we're going to work with today. And that's be able to optimize and find the best way to distribute your products across your network. And then we have simulation. This is where we could see how something's going to perform over time before we implement it. We could validate it. And last but not least, we have transportation optimization with the capability to understand and create milk runs to improve our service level and the way we deliver while maintaining vehicle utilization high. So each one of these components are very important. It's what makes ALX a very great way to be agile and go from component to component, which we're going to be doing a little bit later on. Right here below those components is all the scenarios involved under each component. To the right of it is our settings to run models. To the right is our map editor, where you can quickly pretty much add and make changes. And while you do that, it updates your table editor right below. Very easy to manipulate, change color of your icons, and so forth. Very, very handy. On to the left side, you have tables. And a quick view of that is that there's several tables to create a network optimization, but we have what's called basic. That means that these are tables that are required to fill in order just to run a basic network optimization. We do have more tables, and then we have those that we have records in it to create something of this nature. So obviously we need, for this one model, to create a baseline, right? We needed about 18 tables, some with a little bit of a few records, right? But we'll show you how you can potentially make changes here, right? And just the rest of the data was just potentially imported from like an Excel sheet or from a database. So you could definitely have somebody query that data in and have someone like a manager or analyst just kind of run the models and see if the suppliers make sense. So let's begin with our baseline. So currently you're looking at an actual California furniture wholesaler and distributor that provides different retail across the nation. They provide to large and medium-sized stores. As you see, there's about 100 customers in the West Coast, about 3 major DCs, one in the north, one in the mid-central California, and one in the south California. And they're kind of split by region, as you see, one in the north region and the 2 in the south region. All suppliers supply to the respective regions. So you'll probably see that we'll have a bed supplier up north, as mentioned, as north region, and a bed supplier south region. And the same thing with a desk. We do have 2 different suppliers, and we do have a crib supplier, which provides to both regions. So we could actually go ahead and focus on that just to help you guys a bit. And it's right here. So it's kind of north of this DC, and he provides to both actual DCs. So just a quick view of it. We have about 7 factory suppliers, right, providing to all our DCs and then providing a cost. So it's a very straightforward supply chain. And we do have demand. We could definitely use historic demand this way to help you assess which one's the correct supplier. There is also, just a reminder, there is 4 products we're working with right now. So just imagine one person working a category of furniture, right, in the company or the organization. And so they're basically looking into potential new suppliers for these products now. And so we have them listed as non-active suppliers. This way we can activate them and activate other new suppliers as well. So there's ways we can group this to make it facilitate the process of activating them on the supply chain. You'll see as we go into our first scenario. Once you've imported your data, you can go ahead and set up your network. And once that's completed, you can run your experiment to find out what that baseline is. So let's go ahead and run that experiment. And based by us going here to this panel in our settings and running the model for one solution, then you can go ahead and see what those results are. If you take a look at the results, you'll notice that the profit was $61.2 million. If you go to our overall stats section, and obviously you'll notice there's a lot of different stats you could take a look at, from demand fulfillment, storage, and so forth. Pretty much anything in your master planning perspective, where you should store, how much should you produce, how much should you purchase, supply, and so forth. But looking at our overall stats, you'll notice that how that objective, that 61.2 million, came to be. You'll notice some of the inbound processing costs, the revenue, the outbound, and there's an array of other attributes you could assign to your objective. But you'll notice that biggest cost was transportation costs, which was quite a bit. You should also be aware that the 61.2 million should match your profit and loss statement. So it should be very accurate. This way you can provide confidence that your network does display the same behavior that your organization / supply chain does. So let's go ahead and look at the framework. This framework is going to help us identify who ships to who. So if you take a look, the desktop north supplier, the dresser north supplier, and the bedroom north supplier provide to the north DC only to fulfill certain customers as you see fit from the DC in the north. And then the active crib supplier provides to all 3 DCs. And then in the south, we have the desk supplier, the bed supplier, and the dresser supplier providing to both the middle DC and the south DC in California. This framework provides us an overview of how our supply chain operates and distributes its products to its suppliers. Now let's imagine that we have a new supplier, a new desk supplier, and they're providing a reduced unit price. He's providing a $10 unit cheaper desk in South region and a $5 per unit cheaper than in the North region. And so we're going to put the supplier in the South region and by the Central DC. And so the question is going to be, is it worth to fulfill the demand in both regions? Does it make financial sense to select this vendor? So what we need to do is to compare the true global cost profit of the opportunity compared to its current 2 suppliers. And compare with no constraints and making sure that it selects and lets the optimizer select what's the best choice. All right, in order for us to do that, we're going to go ahead and be able to copy this baseline. Why? Because we want to be able to create it from our baseline and create this scenario, okay? So in order to do that, you can go ahead and create a copy of that NO. It's as easy as this. And then you could rename it as this, right? Here's already a completed version of it, which I'm about to move into so that I can continue working and save you guys time. But the whole point of it is to show you how easy it is to build from your baseline these scenarios of these new suppliers. So it should be pretty similar, right? The only thing is I made a few changes. So I'm going to show you what those changes are, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this because we already have a copy. And I'm going to save you guys a bit of time, but I'm going to show you guys what I did, okay? We're going to run 3 types of experiments, okay? We're going to run the baseline of one supplier, right, which is the desk only. And then we're going to run an optimal with the new supplier. And then we're going to provide like a constraint to only select 2 suppliers because maybe we only want 2, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at what we changed, okay? Since we're only working with one product, right, desk, and with only certain suppliers, we need to make changes to the products table and remove all the other products as they're already removed as you see here. And the other thing you have to make changes to is your DC and factories, just making sure you exclude all the other suppliers that are not desk suppliers. And definitely once that happens, then you are set and ready to go and to run an actual experiment and get your optimal baseline. This optimal baseline is basically how you're currently operating with just this one desk. So it's going to be a good measure as you start making changes to see if there's an improvement or not from your baseline. So let's go ahead and run this optimal baseline. And we're going to show you how I got that. Just get one best solution, which is the best one, which is our current state. And this is basically our optimal baseline. Should be the same thing, you see that? And so once we get this optimal baseline, go ahead and delete this because it's the same thing. You're gonna have a complete baseline for it that you can use later on. So let's take a look at the overall stats for that baseline. Have an idea. So there you go. So yeah, it pretty much just, once again, shows you how you got to that objective. Let's take a look at here. So this is how you're currently operating for that one product. And as you see fit, it's pretty much the North region is providing to the North DC, and the desk in the South region is supplying to both the DCs and the bottom, which is basically how it's operating now. Now, to be clear, we set up this actual supplier baseline because we were able to get the baseline, the major baseline, and just basically make a copy of, and then just kind of remove everything we need to remove from the non-desk suppliers and the actual products. But you could also have your your IT group also query the specific category or product they're working on, so you could start at this perspective instead of starting with a major baseline. So it's really up to you at what level you want to start and how you want your vendor selection process to work. Okay, so let's now consider the new desk supplier. So let's go to your data. Just go to your DCs and factories, and as you see here, we already have the new desk supplier, and it's currently excluded, and it's grayed out. So to kind of show that it's non-active supplier versus your active green suppliers. So just go ahead and set up as consider. Also very important to make sure you consider your other locations, because obviously this one could potentially replace either one of these. So you definitely want to have that available. Now you'll see that it's currently disconnected, so you want to definitely add your paths as well. So you want to be able to allow the new desk supplier to be sourced the DCs. So you could definitely make that be included. You also want to allow it to receive that certain product, right? So you wanted to go from active desk suppliers to also include the non-active desk suppliers, active and non-active, that is. Just click that, and there you go. And last but not least, you also want to add the new price that they're offering, right? The incentive, which is, I think, a little bit cheaper. So if you were to go to, here you go, to your production, you'll see here that here's the desk. And as I mentioned early on, it was $10 cheaper than the South region supplier that provides desks, and $5 cheaper than the North region supplier. So let's just go ahead and include this. So now that we've set it up, the DC supplier, now we can run this model and see how it works. So I could go ahead and run this. It'll take me a few seconds, but here's the result. I ran it for 3 solutions. Okay, now let's take a look at the first one. In comparison to our baseline to this first optimal choice, there was a profit about $300,000. Which is pretty good. So you could quickly just open it up, and you could pretty much tell which suppliers are selected. Actually, to get the most profit, it was best to use all 3. So let's click on that, and let's take a look at it straight. So as you see here, you'll see that there's potentially this supplier is supplying the South DC. Then the new supplier is basically supplying the middle DC. And obviously the top supplier, the North, is supplying the North DC. So you kind of have a quick view, and you could also express it in this way, what actually happened. So this $300,000 improvement will require this kind of framework now to operate for this particular product, which is really good. Now, if we go with our second place, and you kind of take a look at that, you'll notice that that's pretty much our baseline. So it's suggesting that our second best option would be just to stick with the baseline. And if you were to go with the third option, obviously it's pretty much this option where this new supplier is sharing the North and the South and providing the desks. So a bit of perspective on how it's viewed. Another way to actually view that is also by taking a look at product flows. And you can have an idea from a supplier's perspective how that occurs. So take a look at this. You can set up your iterations. You can take a look at the best option, right? And take a look at this. So from the desk North supplier provides to North D, there was a flow of about 14,000 units. And from the South supplier to the South DC was 94,000 units or 95,000. And the new supplier to middle DC was close to 22,000. So this kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what that breakdown would be. All right. It gives you a little bit more additional detail if you go to the right, like for example, the distance. And you could probably have a global view of that as well if you want to sum all the distances and the transportation unit cost and transportation total cost, and so forth. So obviously there's an array of information you can get from a lot of these other stats. But this tells a story that there's an actual benefit to working with all three. All right, so let's go ahead now and let's work with the opportunity that maybe that we wanted only one supplier per region, or maybe we just wanted 2 suppliers. So we could go ahead and make changes to our data. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's go ahead and add that as a constraint. As you'll notice, I call the active and non-active desk suppliers group, and I minimized it only to 2 suppliers. So that's pretty much it. So once just make this quick change, then I go ahead and run my experiment, and I get the following result. So if you take a look at the first one, it actually reverts back to your current baseline. It selects the 2 current suppliers instead of the new one as the best opportunity if we had a constraint of 2 suppliers or 1 per region, however we want to set that up by. Okay, so let's go ahead and work with the second supplier scenario now. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to run a baseline, and then we're going to run the optimization with the new supplier. So we'll do the same thing we did with the previous scenario, right? And obviously, we'll make sure that it's only dresser, right? And it's only active suppliers, and we're going to run the baseline. And upon running the baseline for one solution, then we would get the following result, and it would be 4.7 million. So we click on this. This is our current framework, right? So just to show that it is what our current operation. Yeah, as I said before, it's dresser North region supply providing to North DC, and dresser South region supply providing to both DCs in the South. So this is perfect. This is what we wanted. Now we want to go ahead and now set up the new dresser supplier. So I'm going to show you how easy it now, because on the previous one we went a little bit slower. Now I'm going to go ahead and update the data. For example, the 4 things we would have to update is the production, right? The production price, which I believe is already set up for it. We're going to allow the path into sourcing for all active and non-active suppliers, and obviously set up the supplier. We want to make sure that it's set up as now consider. So this is very important. Once we get that set up, then the last thing is we need to understand that in this scenario, we have a potential new dress supplier, right, in the North that offers volume discounts. This guy right here. So this supplier is offering a discount of any 30,000 units below is 10% discount. 30 to 60 units is 20%, and 60 or above 1,000 units of the dresser is 50% discount. And how you set that up is by making sure you set up your linear ranges so that you set up your flow from 0 to 30 and your discount being 10% to be applied to this. Your 30 to 60 applying a 30% discount, and your 60 and above providing a 60% discount. So let's go ahead and run our experiment now. And we're going to look at for the top 3 solutions, and upon running it, we would get the result as we see here. Here's our first result with a profit of 6.2, and our baseline was 4.7. So wow, it's a big improvement, a big opportunity. Let's take a look how that would function. So as you take a look, the southern supplier would still fulfill the South DC only, and we would actually pick up the new supplier to supply most of the portion to its middle DC, and a small portion here to the North DC, with the supplier fulfilling the rest. So this is a very good find, but let's take a look at the product flow to understand a little bit. So to have a better view here, we're going to go ahead and provide product group and then iteration group. And so this gives us a quick view of our top choice, our first choice. So let's take a look at our first top choice. And as you see, as we've seen before in our map, it provides this same result, right? Because this is our first most optimal result. And here's the amount of units. So, okay, so let's go ahead and work with our third scenario. We have a new potential bed and desk supplier. Now they're a bit further out east, but they do allow a direct shipment of 250 miles, but their selling price is $5 to $10 more than their current suppliers. So now the challenge is to verify if the 205-mile benefit outweighs the additional selling costs and our current suppliers that are set up and active. So can we also provide a master planning? Yes, we can. So let's go ahead and set that up. Just like in the previous slides, or previous scenarios, that is, we were first making sure that we're only set up for bed and dressers and products, right? And that we only have the active suppliers to run our current baseline. So let's just quickly check that out. And so we do have only our actual active suppliers. And as you see here, we have our grayed out excluded a new bed and desk supplier. So let's go ahead and run that baseline. So I went ahead and ran it, used a current saved baseline. And as you see, we are at a 34 million profit, which is good. So we were to run our view of that. It looks just like this. So active suppliers. And here's how it's currently operating from this perspective of the framework. And so we do have only the bed and desk north region suppliers providing to the north, and the bed and desk suppliers in the south providing to the south and mid DC. So yes, makes sense. So now let's take a look at our next potential opportunity, where she's providing the supplier into the scenario. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Once again, to provide it, we have to update the production price, make sure that the path and the sourcing are activating the non-active and active suppliers, and we set up the supplier as consider. So making sure we go back here and we set that as consider, just like the other DCs. And we could go ahead and run this experiment. I do want to show that one thing though, because obviously we are only providing a distance of 250 miles, and you could actually make that change here in the paths by selecting the limited distance and making sure that 250 is the limit for this one supplier that's providing to the customers. So let's go ahead and run this model. And if we were to run this model, that we would get this answer. We were to looking for the 3 top best solutions. So we went from 34 million to 50 million. So is it worth it? Yes, it is worth it, big time. It's a great opportunity. So let's see how this looks like with this result. And there you have it, guys. This supplier now is providing to a few customers in the area now, and obviously not all in that's east of that supplier, but enough that it does support this active supplier to be a great addition in terms of distribution to the nearby customers. So great find, great opportunity to use. So let's just take a look at our product flows just to kind of have an idea how that looks, right? So let's have that supplier. It's actually already there, and put it up a bit. Okay, now let's take a look at the final report for the first profitable iteration. And as you see that the new desk and bed supplier provided to several customers, including the South DC, and both the original North supplier and the South supplier provided to their distinct, DCs per se. But let's take a look at the bottom one. We're talking about beds here, but let's talk about desks now. See if there's any difference. And as you see here, the new bed and desk supplier does not provide directly to the DC. It's not worth it for the desk. So it's better just to receive directly from the suppliers, right, to the DCs, and allow the desk to only be supplied directly to the customers. So a good report to kind of indicate what you should be doing from a master planning perspective. And you can see all the transportation costs. So this is really great. Good find, good results, good insight. Okay, so one thing we could also do is add the original desk supplier in the first scenario and just see how that works out. Same thing here. We allow the paths and we set up the actual DC to consider. So we'll go here and now we'll consider this desk supplier from our first scenario, just to kind of see how they would all come into play since they also provide desks. So if we were to run that experiment for top 10, right, we go here, run this, we would get this result here. So we got a lot of options now. And I mean, we could go down each one of these just to kind of see how it worked, going from the most profitable to obviously the least profitable and so on. But this kind of gives us a little bit of a perspective on how this would play out. And as you see here, you have now the desk north supplier, the bed north supplier, the new desk supplier, the bed. So it kind of goes on and on. So you'll see that each one would make sense now to use, and it would benefit each one of them. So pretty interesting find. Obviously, we would have to go deeper into the product flows, but I'm not going to use this one. But I just kind of give you an idea how you could potentially put more suppliers into a scenario and obviously make it more robust to what you're trying to do. But let's make this quick view here, which is gonna make it easy for us to identify what's going on. And so yep. So as you see here is that the new desk supplier that we that we introduced. It's here, right? Is providing directly to the mid DC, and then the new bend supplier. Some of it's going to go into the South DC, and some of it's going to go into the customer. So if you wanted to include that, this would be the actual outcome. But the profit is 50 million, and just for maybe an additional 300,000 managing an extra supplier, is it worth it? So that's something that we would have to consider, and maybe even do a simulation to identify if the service level improves or reduces, and make a better decision on it. So, okay, so let's move on to the next scenario. Let's just imagine now that a sourcing analyst or manager is managing a whole category, right? The whole furniture. So you can now be addressing thousands of products, evaluating each one of them just by running one scenario, right? So this is very important to understand this. The importance of scalability is available for this particular category. So same way, all we're pretty much doing here is making sure that we have access to the dresser, the desk, the bed, and the crib. So we're really pretty much putting all the new suppliers here, including the current suppliers, to kind of give us like this ultimate perspective of everything. So take a look at this, right? Here is all our suppliers, everything now. It's available, active and non-active. And we're considering every potential opportunity. So we're going to allow the optimizer to run and to make sure it fulfills all the demand. This is very exciting. We're the same thing, right? We're just updating the paths. We're just updating the sourcing, making sure they're all active, and just kind of passing all the other parameters of offers and benefits, right? And like the discounts and the paths for like the 250-mile distance. All that has to be available here, and then just kind of run the model to assess if it's worth it, right? But two things we must do, right? First, run the current baseline without the non-active suppliers. Get your result, right? Which is 61 million. And then make everything active, run it with maybe your top three. You're going to realize that the total profit of his category, the category he's running, went from 61 to 77, and including all the suppliers, right? So this is really huge. So how would this look? And there you go. That's now the new optimal opportunity for the organization. And here's kind of who would supply to who to make this happen. So a big opportunity to view at a high scale the flows, right? You can even look at the product flow to address how this is going to work out. Maybe you're selecting the top, you can kind of see already who's to supply who from a bed perspective, crib, desk, dresser, and everything's here to help you run your sourcing solutions. Okay, so now that we've done optimization scenarios for each one of our suppliers and also one for our category furniture, we're going to go ahead and do a comparison of this one first scenario. At least just do one to compare the baseline with all its suppliers, okay? So we're going to kind of see if it's worth it now in a simulation run. In order to do that, let's go click to your this first scenario of the reduced price for desk. Take a look at the baseline, right click on the baseline here, and then just right click here and convert to a sim scenario. What we're doing here is we're grabbing the result to run a simulation, okay? And then we're gonna do the same thing with the optimal new supplier. We're gonna click on it and then just right click on the top solution that we wanna select and just go ahead and convert to a sim scenario. So now what we've done is just basically passed all the data where we created the model, the simulation, ready to go. Now currently I don't have any dashboard or stats for them. So what I did, I already currently built some with the same data and everything intact. I'm going to run these instead. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and delete these two. I just wanted to show you how to convert them over to a simulation. And let's go ahead and compare these both, okay? But first, let's just kind of do a quick simulation run so you can see how it views. And as you see here, you get a quick view of how products are being distributed across your supply chain. Now I'm going to move it rather quickly just to complete it, stop it, and save it. And the great thing is you get to see a final result of that from a profit and loss statement perspective, service level, right? For example, did we have it in inventory when the order came through from the customer? And in many cases we didn't. So obviously the inventory requires some optimization here. You'll also notice ELT wise, currently how we are operating, we're not servicing on time based on the customer expected lead time. So we obviously could improve that to make sure we get the product there as they expected within their range of days. So definitely quite a bit of few improvements. And we could do the same thing here. I'm going to do a quick run on this one. Instead of doing the simulation, do a quick run, and we get a final result as well. And we could also see the same thing if, for example, what the service level was with the new customer, right? This is the new supplier scenario, what the inventory was like, the fulfillment, production, and obviously we could add about a whole array of statistics. We got about 114. So how do we compare these both? Well, we have what's called a comparison experiment, okay? And so what we're going to do is we're going to compare these two scenarios from a baseline to future new supplier and see if it's worth it. So how we do that is just by selecting both suppliers, updating the configure statistics of how you want to see your dashboard, and then upon having all the stats ready, you run your model. And there you have it, the final result. Let's take a look at which one is which one. Here is the new supplier, and here's like the optimal baseline that we had. And here's kind of like here. So you could tell from a baseline perspective, we were at 62% ELT service level, which is not that good, but definitely better with the new not with this new supplier. So obviously this is a win, sticking with the current supplier. Let's take a look at what else. We got an inventory carrying cost. It did reduce quite a bit with the new supplier. But as you take a look at our profit. Our profit went up quite a bit. And you could tell that everything else is pretty nearby, the transportation rate, total cost. So the biggest thing probably was from a profit perspective, that kind of helped it out was the inventory carrying cost quite a bit, and the transportation cost. There was a big significant view there that impacted the profit. To be honest, the profit was not a lot for the new supplier. maybe like 200,000, 250,000, and the ELT went down quite a lot. Here's the potential losing customers. So, is it worth it? I probably would say not. In this case, I would say not. It's definitely not worth it. It seemed like it potentially was, but the ELT just shows that it's not. I wouldn't do it. So this is a great view of how to run a simulation and find out if it's really worth it behind the scenes. In a similar fashion, we could also compare how we compare the desk supplier with its baseline to all suppliers. We can do the same with the major baseline of the organization to that complete actual category. So you could go ahead and export the results. Just right click in here and export the result here. And the same as for the current baseline here, and export this just going through here. And what would happen is we would have both the baseline and this one here in simulation, and also be able to compare them as you see here. And from here you could actually address the question, should we not or should we implement? This is a great way for executives to make decisions. I hope you like this part of the simulation. I hope you like today's webinar. So if you'd like to make a change to your supply chain or organization in 2020 using supplier sourcing, think AnyLogistics. We can help and get your team started. So feel free to schedule a private demo. If you're in North America, you'll schedule it with us. And if you're outside of North America, you can find your local distributor partner at anyLogistix.com. Just go to company and then partners. Now, if you want to schedule with Simul, you can email John at jcentabi@simul.io. If you want to use this tool quickly, you could join our next public training, which is towards the end of Q1. We'll definitely be posting at AnyLogistics. Now, this is a great way to learn how to use the tool and even evaluate the tool. So we encourage you to invite others. See how AnyLogistics can be used with your team. So in this 4-day course, you'll learn how to solve end-to-end business problems in your supply chain with AnyLogistics. Feel free to email John again at jcentabi@simul.io. We do have this private training class, so feel free to also consider that as an option if you got a big enough handful of people that are looking to take that training course. Once again, thank you for joining our webinar. We've reserved this time for Q&A, so we'll answer those now.
Can AnyLogistics handle reverse logistics? And the answer is yes, we can model that with AnyLogistics. Another question was, can we prioritize customers in optimization and simulation? And the answer is yes. Typically with this tool, it's very powerful, very flexible. So any type of process or system that you can articulate, we can model with AnyLogistics. It can help capture that complexity in your models. Is supplier risk modeled in the software? And if so, how? Alex, you want to go ahead and talk about supplier risk?
Yes, absolutely. There's actually events that you can cause. For example, we can close down a border. We could close down a production. So we could cause quite a few things, even increase demand, because for example, for COVID, we can increase demand and so forth. So there's a lot of things we could actually do to create an event and understand the risk behind that event.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the really neat things with AnyLogistics is that it combines optimization and simulation. And what that means is that you're able to capture how your supply chain will perform over time. So when we talk about an event or a disruption to your supplier, whether it's a strike or it's COVID or a hurricane, there are first tier impacts to that, second tier, third tier, things that are going to play out over time that are going to impact the supply chain. And that's where simulation is critical in understanding how the system works together and where you're going to have issues and how to plan around those. So AnyLogistics gives you that ability to not just optimize the supply chain, but simulate how it's going to perform in the real world. Are we able to visualize the data in other visualization tools? Great question. You can. AnyLogistics has some really good dashboards and capabilities inside of it, but you can also very, very easily export all of that into your favorite data visualization tool, your Power BI or Tableau or whatever tools you use, and put together some really unique dashboards and analysis with that. Alex, here's a good one for you. Are simulation scenario assumptions the same as the network optimization scenario?
They could change depending, because a simul is really more real time than an optimization. So there's more detail required for a simulation because it's real world. So there's quite a bit of difference, but typically they should they should work in tandem to provide the ultimate solution if you should or not go with an actual supplier.
Yeah, that's a good response, Alex. And another way to look at that too is that optimization is going to give you the best solution for for a certain point in time, where simulation allows you to understand how the supply chain performs over time, and while capturing all of the variability and resource constraints and all of the things that make your supply chain complex. So you can see how that will actually perform. So when Alex talks about real time, we mean how the simulation would perform in the real world. Another great question is how to work with digital twin using AnyLogistics. This is a very powerful way to use this tool. So once you set up a model with AnyLogistics and pull in information from your business systems, your SAP, your Oracle, any ERP systems that you use, or any business system really we can work with. You pull that into the tool, and then you'll have a digital twin of what's happening right now. And then you can start running these experiments and doing your simulation or doing your optimization, finding out what will happen. So that can be very powerful in sourcing. That can be very powerful in risk management. Let's say a supplier shuts down, then what do you do? What are your options? So if you have a digital twin of your facility or of your supply chain, you can test different scenarios and compare scenario A, B, and C before you make a decision. And a word we like to use is that it helps your organization to become more agile. So you can make faster decisions and you can respond to changes in demand and changes in the market more quickly. And when you do that, you become you gain a greater competitive advantage in the market. You can take advantage of opportunities and risk that every one of your competitors are facing, and you can respond quicker and better at it and really make data-driven decisions around it. I think that covers all the questions that I'm looking at right now. So if you have any more questions, you see my email here, jsantavy@simwell.io, or you can go to simwell.io and click contact us if you have any questions for us. If you want to check out AnyLogistics, I encourage you to go to anyLogistix.com. You can download a trial version of the software. You can find your local partner. Simwell is the distribution partner for AnyLogistics in North America. So we have teams in Mexico, USA, and Canada. And if you need help globally, you can reach out to any of your partners. So Alex, thank you very much for such a great presentation. Everyone will receive the models and this presentation in your inbox sometime next week. We look forward to talking to you more. Thank you.